Hello again. My name is Chris Baglieri, and I'm one of the co-leaders of this Staying Comfortable group. It's customary for small group ministries to host a service, at least periodically, to share the work of their small group with the congregation, and that's why I'm here with fellow members of the group and my co-leaders today. The last time I was up here, I spent time talking about fear and anxiety. Yeah, let's have that guy back. But the focus of that was how to transform these very legitimate feelings into action that's somehow in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. I spoke about how the scary can become the sacred. Well, about a year ago, I presented a related reflection titled, Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable, which was more specifically focused on the experience of being a Unitarian Universalist in the current political climate, in the current place we are in history. And get comfortable being uncomfortable seemed to be something that we needed to think about at that time. I focused on the very real sense of discomfort that many of us are still feeling, and the stress of living in a world where our value system seems to be devalued, and where decades of progress seem in danger of disappearing over only months and years. Apparently, that service struck a chord with some people in the congregation who had been sharing similar sentiments and also asking about what we collectively might do about it. So, at the urging of our fearless leader, Lexi, I joined forces with some of those others and created a group which was perhaps inadvertently or ironically misnamed Staying Comfortable. If you recall, the original name of my service was Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable, but we didn't think that that name was a very welcoming. See that in the church bulletin. Hey, how'd you like to go to the Staying Uncomfortable group? But part of what today's service is about is putting that in context. I joined together with Carla Cevasco and Tracy Liston as my co-leaders, and we've been co-leading the group ever since for about a year. It may have been a surprise, even to some of my co-leaders, that this group is actually considered a small group ministry. And perhaps that idea needs a little bit of unpacking, because some people are not familiar with the concept of small group ministry. According to the UUA's Small Group Ministry Guide, a small group ministry, which is sometimes called a chalice circle or a covenant group, are groups of 6 to 12 people, intentionally small, hence the name, and not necessarily members. Small group ministry is open to non-members, if you know anybody. But it's for a small group of people who choose to gather together regularly and covenant, and that's why the alternate name of covenant circles is used, to build social connections and strengthen community through shared experiences. That's very much what this group has been about. But also to explore Unitarian Universalist values together and asking specifically, what do our UU values demand of us? And the third purpose of small group ministry is in support of the congregation's larger ministry. If UUCSH's mission statement is Unitarian Universalism writ large, explore spirituality, engage community, transform the world, then small group ministry is the fine print. Small group ministry explores our spiritual values in the day-to-day. Today, this moment. Yesterday's news. Tomorrow's hopes. By talking about the news, sometimes to our regret, and sometimes with laughter, this group grounds ourselves in the present moment as Unitarian Universalists. We're engaging community in a way that's personal, not abstract. UU congregations are supposed to be, or idealized to be, a community of communities. And our group covenants or agrees to commit time to one another, to share feelings that might not be comfortable to talk about in our world in a way that we've decided works for us. Sometimes we talk about those feelings in a very abstract or academic way, which one of my co-leaders will talk about. Sometimes in a very real, let's have some coffee and donuts and talk about it way. We're transforming the world, starting with ourselves and those that we see every week. And that's important. That's work. That's a ministry. In fact, that's a small group ministry. When we gather together, we feel heard, and we hear that others feel, in some ways, but not all, the way that we do. We learn from each other. We encourage each other, not just in the abstract, but in the moment when we most need it. Together, we're striving to answer the question that goes beyond how do we survive this moment in history, but continues onward to questions like how do we strive in this moment, and hopefully into a place of hope with how can we thrive. In my last reflection, I talked about the boundary between uncomfortable and comfortable, and quite simply I contended that that boundary is defined by our fears. The Staying Comfortable group has enabled me to push back that line in the sand represented by my fears and move less from a place of fear and more from the stance of always standing on the side of love. Hopefully my friends feel that way as well.
Sometimes I come with a specific sorrow to joys and sorrows. Often I find myself just thinking, I weep for the world. I think many of us in this room have been feeling similarly, and those feelings are part of what brought our small group ministry together. In recent years, I have heard the sentiment in media, in political speech, that we are living through unprecedented times, that the overt bigotry and violence of this moment do not represent who we are as Americans. As a scholar of American history and culture, I can tell you that this sentiment is not founded in fact. We are living through precedented times. As new and shocking as this moment might feel for many of us, violence and bigotry have been baked into the United States from its very beginning. The American Revolution was a civil war. Its early days marked by mob violence we now know by names like the Boston Tea Party. It took the bloodshed of another civil war nearly a century later to end slavery, and with the Reconstruction amendments to the Constitution, to codify voting rights and citizenship for Black Americans. Within a few short years, the backlash in the South, which included lynching and violent election interference, put a stop to the progress the Reconstruction amendments had promised. It took almost another entire century for the civil rights movement to pressure the federal government into enforcing those amendments through legislation like the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. All of this unfolded against the backdrop of the genocide of Native Americans, which consisted not just of war and disease, but sexual violence and disappeared children. For most of American history, women could not vote, own property, or even own their own bodies. LGBTQIA+ people sometimes found places where they could live openly as themselves, but sometimes faced cruel forms of persecution. Xenophobia, ableism, I could go on and on, right? This, as I frequently admit to the college students I teach, is some pretty dark stuff, but I don't say stuff. But I hope they think it's worth knowing. I teach them that history comes in waves, that progress on issues like racial equity has advanced only in fits and starts over the centuries and has always met backlash. The pendulum swings. The Reconstruction amendments, 100 years of Jim Crow, the Civil Rights Movement ushering in 60 years of multiracial democracy, and then this backlash, whatever this is, that we're living through now. I teach my students about two different ways of thinking about the founding of the United States. The first is the idea that the founders were basically geniuses. They came up with some fabulous concepts, like all men are created equal and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And these were such fabulous ideas, they were just destined to grow and flourish over time. The other way of thinking about this, which happens to be the one I believe, is instead the notion that the founders had a very narrow idea of who deserved rights and freedoms. It has taken the courage, the persistence, and often the blood of generations of protesters and change makers in this country to expand the boundaries of freedom, to stretch these ideas about equality and liberty to encompass more and more people, far beyond what the founders ever intended. This is the lens that I bring to our sharing circle, the historian's eye, the certainty that we are living through precedented times. These are dark truths to sit with. They can bring up a lot of feelings: guilt, anger, fear, even hopelessness. If things have always been this bad, you might ask, and some of my students do, what is there even worth fighting for? But I like to look at it a different way. I like to think that living through these precedented times can give us hope, giving us the knowledge that nothing is inevitable, that throughout history many courageous people, many of them our UU ancestors, have contested our nation's wrongs, often long before it was popular or safe to do so. These people left us their speeches, their poetry, their essays, their songs, their stories. Stories about protest and struggle, yes, but also about all the other things you need to do to survive. Things like laughing, singing, and dancing, even when the road ahead will be muddy and rough, or crowded with riot police. Courage, as our Time for All Ages book reminded us, means standing up for what is right. None of this is easy. I return to our opening words by the prison abolitionist Mariam Kaba. Hope is a discipline, and we have to practice it every day. In the world we live in, it's easy to feel a sense of hopelessness. I understand why people feel that way. I just choose differently. Looking at our past, I choose to feel hope, and I try to share this hope with others in our group and beyond. Knowledge of our history can inform our playbook for the future. Our ancestors endured so much, and we can learn from them. At our sharing circle, we rage and we grieve. We fight to make sense of the world, and then we fight back. But we also laugh a lot, because we take joy in gathering together in community, because our ancestors tell us that this is the way.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Tracy Liston. Here to give the third and final reflection of our Staying Comfortable sharing circle. Our group quickly adopted the well-known mantra, action is the antidote to despair, as we planned our meetings. While we needed a safe space to vent and share our feelings, we also did not want our venting to be the only focus of our time together. So you may be wondering, well, okay, great, but what actually do you guys do? Well, we share resources with one another. Books, podcasts, information about local organizations that are fighting the good fight. We invite speakers to our meetings. Early on, we had Jake Bilski from Dyer come to speak to us and explain how Dyer is providing both rapid response to ICE raids and legal support services to immigrant families in our communities. We also invited our own Nadine Sapperman to educate our group on citizen advocacy through the UU Faith Action New Jersey. You may know that this organization holds weekly online action hours every Friday. Nadine gave us tips for contacting our representatives, voicing our concerns, and she led by example. She actually called her representative during one of our meetings. UU Faith Action is a wonderful group to partner with as they advocate for statewide policy change. Another organization, Somerset County Indivisible, which is led by our own Sherry Rust, has partnered with the UUCSH Social Action Committee to host several events here, such as making whistle kits or posters for No King's Days. Members of our Staying Uncomfortable sharing circle showed up for both. Sometimes we read an article and then we discuss it, such as this one that Carla found in The Guardian in the March March 8th issue of The Guardian titled, "How Trump Turmoil is Driving More People to the Therapist's Office." The article is written by Ash Sanders, and I'd like to quote just a little bit from it, because this one really resonated with me. "Political depression is the knowledge that the world is falling apart, paired with the sense of customary forms of political response are no longer working. Political depression might look like traditional depression, the same hopelessness, despair, and shutdown, but its source is different. It doesn't come from within, not at least primarily. Feeling bad about the state of the world doesn't feel good, but we need to consider ways of coping that connect us to community, that help us feel engaged, and give us a sense of agency and control." This was a good one. The grinding nature of the terrible news cycle is designed to wear us down, and not succumbing to it is a form of resistance. One month we watched several video clips from the UUA that outlined how its ongoing program titled Meet the Moment is designed to help UUs navigate the world we live in. At its core are 3 questions for small groups to ponder. What is the moment we are in? What are the most urgent needs and important opportunities of this moment? And what do our shared UU values call us to do in response? You may be hearing more about Meet the Moment in the future. And finally, we encourage self-care. We will not let anxiety and political depression get the better of us. We will not lose our hope and our joy, because both are very necessary to sustain ourselves for the long haul. We know that many people in our congregation are out in the world working towards social justice in many ways. And we, as a group, we are wondering, what are you doing to take care of your mental health? How do you disengage from the 24/7 news cycle and recharge when necessary? Is it through music or meditation? Maybe taking a walk or a hike in nature? Drawing, painting, coloring? These are just a few ways to take care of yourself, but they are so important. Sometimes when I'm feeling a little sad or angry about the latest news story, which is like every day, I hop in my car and I drive right here and I fill up our little free pantry out on the street. This usually makes me feel better, because even though I have no idea who actually takes the items I put in there, I do know that I release some positive energy out into the world, and that hopefully I made somebody's day a little better. Our agenda is always changing, but at the heart of our sharing circle is the desire to connect with each other and foster a sense of community while we stay uncomfortable.